In a world where our friends call us not us united and our enemies call us midnight rain, two dudes must learn to podcast as the Fremen do in order to survive the desert planet of endless content. We don't care how many enemies we have. They'll never be prepared for us. Not us united.
Nick, there's many a time when we start this podcast joyous and just happy.
Mm-hmm.
And just like ready to really get into a movie that we both loved and cared about. And Nick, I don't know if this is one of those weeks.
I don't know if it is either. But much like our episodes, I'm sure we'll both say enough to convince the other that we're going to be okay in the end.
That's really what this podcast is.
It's typically just, you and me either vibing because we both feel the exact same way about a movie, or it's just one of us talking the other.
Into liking to the other's opinion.
Yeah. That's what, if there's a thesis to this podcast, it's that obviously we do want to see cinema a little differently so that everyone else can, chime in, feel like, oh, you know what, I kind of thought that too, or I thought differently than them. I'm going to leave a comment down below, or, I don't know, on Spotify mention, did I like this episode? Or on iTunes, did I leave a review letting them know? Or leave a comment on YouTube, or like and subscribe. Just those things that...
If Teen Wolf is the most engagement we get from the community, we won.
Yeah. I think what we're trying to say is our two wolf pack would like to grow, because a lot of our howls lately have been sad after watching Teen Wolf the movie.
There's a wolf-sized hole in our heart that only the love of the community can fill.
That's right. And so this is us. Not us united.
Oh.
Signing off one more time.
Well, Nick, I think, first off, this is Not Us United, a podcast that loves to see movies and like to see movies that we love. And Not Us United is united in one thing, and that we're struggling.
Yeah, it's been a rough week. You've all probably heard me mention the MTV hit series Teen Wolf from time to time throughout our episodes as a trashy yet classic television show.
Trashy yet classy.
Yes, trashy, if you will. And there's a lot of heart to the show. There's a lot of silliness, but just awesome. But it's also like a huge foundation for a lot of like just crazy stuff too, because it's monsters, but it's love, man.
Yeah.
And that ended in like 2017, 2018, and they're like, we're done.
Yeah.
One last howl. The Wolves of War, And then all of a sudden, in 2022, there's whispers.
Oh.
And these whispers get a little louder, and you're like, what's happening? And they're like, we're back. 5 years later, it's time.
Back.
The pack is back. It's time for a Paramount Plus. Let's put the finishing touches on this story.
What the audience was clamoring for.
I mean, here's the thing.
I don't know. I don't know anything about this.
It's a beautiful show in that they can just make up whatever they want to happen, and it's fine, because it is loose enough that it doesn't really matter what's going on.
Sure.
It's similar to like shows like Supernatural or something like that, where it's just like, okay, this could just go on forever because mythology.
Yeah. Endless.
Werewolves, it's always going to be awesome. And so you caught wind of this because you're my best friend.
There was a scent in the air.
Yeah. And you're officially part of my pack now.
Yeah.
I don't let just anyone into there.
I appreciate
and I
that.
have to bite you, which is like the weirdest part.
That's why I got those teeth marks.
That's right, yeah.
Oh,
you can't know it's coming. and I have to do it at night when you're sleeping.
You're like, Michael, it's not weird that I'm in your bedroom at midnight, but here, your hand is in between some bread, and I'm taking a bite, and I'm like, sure, whatever, this sounds fine. This is a normal thing that we do on this podcast.
Yeah. And so now
Wait,
I
haven't bitten you, so are you a part of my pack?
No, because I'm the alpha.
Oh, yeah.
You probably understood that from the get-go, just seeing me. But you're the beta.
Okay, fine.
Until I teach you the ways, maybe you can become an alpha yourself. Just don't kill me.
I have to kill you, right?
Well, you technically you always have the ability to, but you shouldn't.
You keep talking like that, I might have to.
Okay. Well, we'll see if this works out.
At the end of this podcast, one of us is only standing.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, so since you kind of caught wind that I like this, you're like, Nick, the movie's coming out. We have to watch this together. Mm-hmm. Even though I myself have only watched maybe a season and a half of this show
that I barely remember.
Yeah. And there's like 6+ seasons. Yeah. And they kind of did weird stuff where it was like 6 full seasons, but like 2 or 3 of them had parts A and B, and so they were really long, like 10 episodes each, almost like a season each. And so I was a little concerned to have you
jump into this.
Jump in and be like, oh man, there's just going to be so many questions I have to answer. But then I forgot that the writing is so like simple in terms of like characters and like what they are, that like I can just say something like, okay, so that person's a were-coyote, and you're like, yeah, totally. And I'm just like, oh wait, there's no question. Oh yeah, okay, that's pretty self-explanatory.
I had a surprisingly few questions during the movie.
You're just like, I'm here, baby, and I'm like, that's a hellhound. And you're like, dope. Let's keep going. I'm like, all right, okay, perfect.
I know there's more. I know there's way more.
Yeah, that's a kitsune, and you're like, oh yeah, totally, that makes sense. Fox, Japanese I know stuff. Kitsune, got it. Yeah. Oh, sick. Samurai. Woo.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, this guy's all right. So that was super fun because I was like worried I was just gonna be like, I don't know what's happening, but that's like stop, like we just gotta go. But no, you owned it.
Much like many of the people in this movie, I transformed.
Yes, you did. But unfortunately, with how trashy this TV show and the source material was, for those who need an explanation of what Teen Wolf is, it is the loosest adaptation reboot of the Michael J. Fox movie Teen Wolf, in the sense that there's a guy named Scott who has a best friend named Styles, and Scott turns into a werewolf.
Yep, and he's a teenager.
And then that's where the adaptation stops. He doesn't go on to get good at basketball. Mm-hmm. He does get better at lacrosse, I suppose.
Very good.
But that's not
different sport
at all like the plot of the show. Whereas the movie is very much like, basketball. When I'm a werewolf, I'm good at basketball. But when I'm not a werewolf, am I as good? Am I anything without the wolf? Whoa. That's the whole premise of
what I ask myself every day.
Michael J. Fox movie. Stop comparing the two. Just like, that's it.
They're different.
Even though they're called Teen Wolf.
Is this like a heated thing in...
Well, I just think when I say Teen Wolf the movie,
I
think a lot of people are going to tune in this episode. Wow, they're going to do the Michael J. Fox movie. We're not.
Yeah.
This is the 2023 Teen Wolf
hit classic,
the movie on Paramount Plus.
Yes.
So there we go. We did it. But anyway, I just wanted to like clarify what we were doing.
Yeah. So I was going to say excited, but I don't know about excited. I was happy to watch this movie with you.
Yes.
I would not be watching this movie if you weren't like, you text me in a fever, like, oh, dude, the new Teen Wolf movie's coming out. We have to do it for the podcast. And I'm like, well, my one caveat is we have to watch it together because I don't know anything that's happening.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we did. But yeah, I agree that this is a very... I'm genuinely curious for those who are listening if they even like have watched this movie.
This might be our least heard episode.
Yeah, but it's par for the course because every year there's got to be some werewolf movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
and not a lot of people watch.
Well, that's like once a year for Nottish United. There's always some werewolf movie that we do and that no one listens to. That's I think our three least first year was Werewolves In, iconic.
Yeah.
Then it's the Werewolves by Night.
Werewolf by Night last year.
And then this one.
And then is Teen Wolf the movie.
Yeah. And it's
You
just
got
like, we got to have some kind of werewolf thing.
I think it's an annual tradition. So
Yeah.
maybe next year we'll find like just a really good werewolf thing.
That's a good thing.
But I guess last year Werewolf by Night was awesome.
It was actually, it
So
was good.
anyway, it's totally good. Okay. I guess we can go
Into what the review.
a spoiler-free review of
Yes.
Teen Wolf the movie.
Explain what happens, Nick.
Sure, I got this. So, if you haven't watched 6 seasons worth of television before this, the only thing that will confuse you is, who are these people?
And what are they doing here?
Yeah, and why are they here? But other than that, I feel like you can kind of track with what's going on.
I think given the little information I knew,
Yeah.
I was like, hey, there's some wolves, and they all know each. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry
No, I
to
get
boil it
You
down
got
to
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But even then, you're like, he's a hellhound. I'm like, okay, cool.
Sure, yeah.
I
There's
understand
like
mostly what's going on
variations.
here.
Yeah, they try to vary like what type of werewolf people are.
I don't think it's unbreakable, this movie, to be like, I have to have all this. But it was. Well, I guess there's probably some dynamics of like these people knew each other, or they dated, or
Yeah, I mean, I think
he's this
ultimately
person's brother or whatever.
Yeah, it's gonna help you. Like, honestly, though, it might not hurt a lot of your review because there's some innocence of just like, oh, I didn't even know that person probably should have interacted with that person.
Yeah, I have no
that
baggage.
the fan base would actually care more for
Yeah.
that. And so when I'm kind of like doom and gloom, like, oh, this could have been better, I think you're like, oh, well, I think it was fine. And I was like, well, but that character was like best friends with that character, and then they didn't have any screen time together.
Mhm.
That's weird.
And I'm like, cool.
You're like, cool, yeah. So I think you're going to get 2 very interesting reviews of this film. That'll probably be the exact same score, but for
Yeah.
different reasons.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's probably fair.
That's my prediction.
Do you want to explain the plot of Teen Wolf the movie, Teen Wolf on Paramount Plus?
Sure. We are 15 years later, post
Teen
the
Wolf.
end of the series.
Mm-hmm.
We find Scott McCall has left the city called Beacon Hills, which was where the majority of the series took place. It's a little on the nose, but Beacon Hills is where a lot of the supernatural activity takes place in the area.
Like a beacon?
Perhaps. Like a beacon. And there's a lot of things that are like a beacon in the show. And they just own the fact that it's called Beacon Hills. But he is being haunted by dreams of a character that hasn't been around for a while. And he thinks that there might be some merit into looking into this, to investigating, because part of Teen Wolf's heart is that there is a mystery component. They have to be detectives and wolves.
Wow. Incredible.
And so he has to reassemble his pack that he hasn't reconnected with often over the 15 years. And not 100% made up of only werewolves. He has allies on the human side, on the other supernatural side.
Coyote side.
We have some coyotes in there. We've got some kitsunes in there. We've got some other werewolves.
Yeah. It's all stars.
We've got a banshee in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of just cool supernatural characters.
And we definitely see all of them do something.
They all technically are on screen.
Yeah.
That is right. And yeah, there's basically a known villain. I won't say where they're from, but they are from the previous series, and they've been resurrected to wreak havoc on Scott McCall's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so couple hesitations going into this was there was a few characters that weren't going to make an appearance with this reunion, and the understanding was that this was truly supposed to be like a Teen Wolf reunion, so it was kind of weird when they said certain main characters wouldn't be making an appearance again. And so, like, for those of the show, Styles is Scott McCall's, like, yin and yang. Like, he's the human best friend who is just as savvy in his own way than the werewolf that we know Scott McCall to be. And so, like, they're just very good dynamic. And Styles is played by Dylan O'Brien.
Our boy.
our boy, we love D.O.B. He said he would not return for the movie. It didn't seem like it was out of ill will. It probably was either a scheduling conflict, or maybe he just felt like the story ended well and just didn't want to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say. I didn't really look into it. Maybe he spoke more about it, or maybe he will now that the movie is out.
Like, yo, didn't want to be a part of that one.
Yeah, maybe he saw like what they were trying to do and was just like, and so they had to kind of figure out a way to write him out of the film.
Very convincingly.
Yeah.
Might I not add?
Yeah. There was like a beat where they kind of explained like why he isn't there, and one of the things kind of made sense. But in the end, you're like, it's hard when the show did such a good job of making Styles such a staple character without having fangs or some supernatural ability or like whatever, when the whole premise is like wolves.
Yeah.
So, he is kind of the heart of the show because he is us in the show, because we aren't the other monster type things. And so that was kind of a hard sell for me. So I kind of already had some like trepidation going into this, being like, ooh, I don't know, without Styles there. And then there's just a few other people who didn't make an appearance that was kind of like, I don't think that was that big of a deal. I don't think everyone has to be back for this reunion. And I think what's really interesting is they really did try to get everyone else, even if it was at the cost of like that person just not having anything to do. I feel like there were some characters that were back that were just
there,
you know, like could have been anyone, you know?
Or not even there.
Yeah. And so it was one of those kind of, for it being a reunion, some of those characters probably didn't have to make the trip back. So that was another hard thing for me. But overall, how do you even talk about this?
Just from your heart.
Just from my heart. Well, I guess I want to hear from your point of view, like, how digestible was this film?
Sure.
For not having any of the prior knowledge.
Yeah, I think it was, I mean, I went into it knowing that it would be cheesy and ridiculous, and so it was cheesy and ridiculous, but apparently not to the extent that Nick would want. So I think it was digestible. It wasn't the most digestible, but that was also because like I got the 411 from you of like, if a character showed up on screen, I'm like, I don't know who they are, what are they? And you were like, da.
Yeah.
And like, oh, this person's related to this person. I couldn't remember any of that right now. But I think if I were to watch it on my own and then if we were to watch it separately, I would have so many questions.
Right.
And I would be like, well, who was this person and why was that connected and why do we care about this person? And so it was probably, I don't know, 50% digestible. It's like, hey, there's some Teen Wolves. If I went into it just knowing like there's a bunch of Teen Wolves and they can transform into other things, sure, you can watch it and it's just it's a movie and you got to just ignore kind of everyone's past and just say like, it's like, hey, they're here, they're all kind of friends, watch it. And I think from that standpoint, for me, it was fine.
God bless you. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I mean, I think there was enough there that, like, here's what I think happened. I think Paramount looked at their properties and was just like,
what do we do?
What's the demographic that would pay money to get our service? And they probably looked at the fan base of, like, all of the stuff that they have. And I think a movie is more affordable than a full-on TV show.
Sure.
For a whole 10 episodes or whatever. And all of the Teen Wolf fans are going to be like mid-20s to early 30s, because that's kind of the age they would have been when it came out 11 or 12 years ago. And so, not that they'd be, I'm saying they're currently
right.
You know, mid-20s to early 30s. And so they're going to buy a month to at least say, hey, I'd like to see the show that ended 5 years ago. Let's just see what happens. And I think they were right in marketing and choosing Teen Wolf because it was their most watched film premiere of all time.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, they clearly picked the right source. I just think within the 5 years that they had to, like, write something, it almost felt like they didn't.
Right. So, do you think this was necessary?
By the end, I almost felt like what I had watched was somebody's fan fiction of what they hoped would happen.
Yeah.
But they weren't, like, in Hollywood, and so they didn't really think through, like, all of the details of, like, trying to include every moving part for what they really wanted to accomplish, which was to let a certain character come back to life so that it would affect another character. That was, like, the whole... That was the sales pitch.
Yeah.
And then they had to write the movie around that, and so... By the end of it, I did just kind of feel like this was kind of glorified, like, fanfic.
I get that,
which isn't always necessarily a bad thing. I think sometimes fans know the source material just as good and can, like, write something incredible. I'm using it in a more negative term in that, like, it kind of
didn't feel polished. It didn't feel like...
Yeah, it didn't really feel... With that amount of time and knowing what they've done in the past with the TV show and, like, making a whole series every year... I mean, sometimes they take, like, a year and a half or 2 years off or whatever, but, like, they came up with, for the most part, a 8 to 10 episode season, and, like, there wasn't a whole lot of filler because they had to move this plot along. And so it was just hard when, like, the whole team assembled again, and then, like, we were delivered, like, less than a TV series length, and it didn't feel polished. And in a lot of ways, almost felt like there were shots that were, like, extending, like, 10 seconds too long. Or, like, a lot of, like...
It felt very bloated.
All right, we got to this MacGuffin, but now it's time for the next MacGuffin. And then they'd walk off stage, and it's just like, okay. But then it would be the next scene. It was like, now it's time to get the other MacGuffin. And they just look at each other and, like, nod. And you're like, oh, no, that's, like, all we're doing for, like, the first 30 minutes of this movie. Like, what is happening?
It was tough because, like, there was definitely times where it's a 2.5 hour movie.
It is.
It's pretty long.
Full length, yeah.
But then there's, like, a shot where they're, like, standing in a field and it's just, like, really just not cut.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's time to Teen Wolf. And it's still on the same person's face for, like, 5 seconds. And then it goes back. Like, whoa, Teen Wolf.
I forgot about the Teen Wolf.
We forgot about the Teen Wolf. And
Let's
they're like,
teen this
dun,
wolf.
dun, 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 and that was like a 5-minute scene that could have been 30 seconds.
You're right.
And they're like, so it just felt like, okay, we have to do a movie, but then it's just not like, I forgot exactly what happened in this movie.
No, it's fine. Oh, yeah, we'll get into it.
But it's
I'll
just
remind
like,
you.
it just like doesn't really feel connected or needed or necessary for, I think, what the fandom probably wanted.
Yeah.
And for someone who's not a fan, just to be like, it just doesn't feel like gripping enough to be like, oh man, here's where, like, I come in to watch Teen Wolf.
Yep.
And I don't want to watch the 6 seasons of Teen Wolf and then be like, here, now it's time to build up to the movie that I saw. It's like, this doesn't feel like the culmination of Teen Wolf. This just feels like people being like, a lot of people are doing reunions now, so let's do a reunion where everyone comes back and we Teen Wolf.
Yeah, it felt very reunion-esque in just that, like, oh, you're here, man. Cool. Remember how we used to be friends? Yeah, that was awesome. Let's keep reunion.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, like, what? There wasn't a good enough why to really sell that this did need to happen. And so in your question of, is this necessary? I think by the end of it, I am happy with the few things that they did story-wise. God, this just makes me feel so, like, I don't know why I, like, feel silly about this, because I need to just own that I like this show.
Yes, you like Teen Wolf. That's fine.
I have good taste.
Yes.
Trust me, everyone. But the hard part about this is that, like, for the most part, when I tell you, like, what's good about Teen Wolf, when I describe what's bad about this movie, it can almost sound similar because the things that are so good about Teen Wolf are that it's kind of angsty.
Mm-hmm.
It is that there is sometimes like plot holes, and it's more of like we're taking on the supernatural bad guy, so you might have to out werewolf him.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like there's stuff like that that's still good. You know, like I watched the CW's Flash for like 4 seasons, and you know what the main plot of that was? Run faster than the other guy that's running fast.
Incredible.
And I'd still watch those 22 episode seasons because there was still something about it that was like good, but I would say 80% of those episodes boiled down to you need to run faster.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what Teen Wolf is. It's
Right.
like, okay, I know you're a werewolf. I know you are unlocking more powers, but you're going to have to be more of a werewolf now. And it's like sick. And it's just kind of that feel good comfort. Yeah.
Yeah. But
But this wasn't that.
Yeah.
It really didn't end up. If anything, it was that they almost all forgot what they had learned. Like no one like kept their growth. It was almost like a reunion in and of itself as a reboot, where like it was almost like a new start, where almost everyone kind of forgot how to do what they had. It's hard for me to believe it because like there was so much growth in the series, and that series only took place in real time over the course of like 2 or 3 years. It was just high school. And over 15 years of break means that they've had like 5 times the length of what we've gotten to know them to grow and like get interesting. Maybe their powers unlock something. And it was like none of that mattered. 15 was just a number.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of started over. And so that's where I think I struggled the most with this, was I was like, oh, you did a time jump. Well, that means you must have something interesting to do about a time jump. And that it was just a number by the end of it. And so it was hard for me in that regard.
Yeah, that is tricky. Do you think because of the amount of characters they put in here that weekend, overall, everyone's character, everyone's desire, everyone's like, it's like everyone needs to have their moment, and just like now there's 20 people who need to have their moments.
Yeah, so I think this is a good compliment for the show. I do think what they did was make a lot of really likable characters over the course of that 6-season show. Yes, there's the main ones, like everyone wanted to see Scott. You can't do Teen Wolf without Scott. But honestly, you can't do Teen Wolf without like 6 or 7 other characters. And those 6 or 7 other characters are Styles, which that was why it was a huge red flag when he wasn't going to show up. Lydia had to be a part of it. Derek has to be a part of it. Derek's dope, my boy. You had to have Argent show up. You probably had to have Scott's mom at some point. You have to have Coach. You don't necessarily... Oh, you have to have Stilinski, which is Styles' dad, as the sheriff. So there's like almost 10 characters that's like, whoa, you have to have Peter. Peter had some great scenes in this.
And Peter is the Hellhound?
No, Peter is Derek's brother who smokes cigars and was like always like had the long hair.
Oh, Peter was dope. Peter was cool.
Very intense, yes. Peter's awesome. He was the original like villain of the first season, and then kind of came into just kind of this like weird antagonist friend character, like anti-hero is probably how I would label him. But yeah, so there's like some of these like great characters that they like had to do it, and then like there's Liam, who's like, yeah, Liam had a big part towards the end. Mason had a huge part in the end. They just kind of made him like deputy in this, and then there's like what? But then the big one was that Allison would be coming back, and so now we're gonna get into some spoilers of Teen Wolf the movie. Allison was the love interest of Scott for like the first 3.5 seasons, and then she dies. And so the idea of his first love coming back, I think, was like what sold us on this. Was like, hey, awesome! Like Scott finally gets to have whatever, like the happy ending that he could have had. But the hard part was the series had him like move on and finally get with someone, which is Malia, the were-coyote lady who was already with somebody else in this movie.
So it's like, where did that happen? What did that mean?
At some point,
like,
and so they just made it like awkward between the two, but there wasn't like a clear reason for like why that didn't work out.
Yeah.
So there's just like I said, a lot of stuff happened between the series and the movie, and it was like they almost went out of their way to not tell us what happened between the two.
Yeah.
Because they had a story to tell, but then they didn't have quite a good enough story to tell it for 2.5 hours. So now we're stuck with just this awkward amount of screen time with people where
It
like
doesn't lead anywhere.
Yeah, we just did a half an hour of like, oh, you know what you could have done instead? Cut like 4 characters and actually dig into something that matters so that maybe Allison is back, but he's finally moved on, and that makes it even crazier. It's like he doesn't need to have his high school girlfriend come back to life. Maybe that would have pissed everyone off. I don't know. But at least there would have been some tension.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting point of like, what would piss everyone off. What were you really looking for in a Teen Wolf movie?
Great question. Thank you for asking. I've been thinking about this amazing D&D campaign in the Teen Wolf universe. But I wouldn't tell anybody that it's the Teen Wolf universe.
Oh. This is like a legit thing. Okay.
I just haven't found the right crew yet. But when it happens,
well, you got one in your pack.
Maybe 5 years from now or 15 years.
15 years.
I'll come out and I'll be like, I'm a veterinarian all of a sudden. I'm just like, it's time for the wolves to assemble.
I'm just going, oh, woo.
No, I think what makes like what they should have done is that Scott being an alpha werewolf should have assembled a pack, because you don't like, you're not an alpha and then you just kind of like lone wolf it. Like you need to take care of your people. He wasn't doing that at the beginning of this movie. He was just doing his own thing. I think there needs to be, I would have loved for there to have been like 100 werewolves in this thing.
Okay,
and just
all right.
Werewolf war, baby. It doesn't have to be 100, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't think the villain should have been another spirit trickster thing. Like, that was cool when they did it back in the, but like, the idea of what separates Scott from like your average werewolf is what makes him special. And so I think that always shines best when he's up against another like evil werewolf.
I don't know if the budget was really what could afford that. Like, they barely turn into werewolves in this movie.
No, I know. And they don't do the huge transformation. Sometimes they would do that if they were like special werewolves. But for the most part, you just get sideburns and your nose looks kind of funny.
But like even then, it's like they did that for
they like glowed their eyes a lot.
Yeah.
No, it was rough. Like maybe that was part of like budget constraints, because there was like one point where the show like looks like a Windows 98 screensaver or something. It's just like, oh no, what happened? They're on like a rock, and it's like, oh no, nothing else is real on that set except for that one rock.
And there was like a few staging things where like I remember one where Allison was hunting down Scott, and it was like they started like 2 feet away from each other, and she has a bow and arrow. And he's like, don't shoot me, Allison.
Allison, stop. I know you're an expert hunter, but don't shoot me. And she like would miss him, and it's like, what's going on? No, there's some continuity issues that really suck in this movie. Especially that like a guy who learned how to become such a great werewolf over the course of 3 years. Apparently 15 years of just like not doing it. I don't know. This is like, I'm not going to bring this up, but I am going to bring this up. This kind of is like the Luke Skywalker.
Oh, I thought we were going to go
thing
Avatar.
With like the new Star Wars stuff where it's like, oh man, 20 years has passed. I'm intrigued. That's got to do some stuff to Luke Skywalker. Maybe he can like do backflips and shit. No, he's just an old curmudgeon, whatever. And hey, if you like that because of like what it did and made him more of like a relatable character, cool. But for me, I'm like, level up, because like that's the show I was sold. It was like, you level up, you get this new power, your pack, whatever. Let's do it. And so to be like 15 years of honing his craft, he's got to be just a freaking crazy werewolf. And like every step of the way, like a like not even trained cop could have beat the shit out of Scott in this movie. And I'm just like, what is like
There's moments where it's like
he's like a supernatural
you were yelling
being.
at the screen to be like, "You are a werewolf!
Yeah,
Run!"
Yeah, like he has enhanced. He's Captain America, but a werewolf.
Right.
And there's times when he just like gets slapped across the face, like, oh, that hurt me. It's like these are human people. They would be hitting a brick wall, and it was just like the continuity of it was just really hard for me. So, yeah, I think what I would have sold was a much more like honed and crafted Scott that has like, hey, since you haven't seen me in a while, check this shit out. And then like we get to see like a montage of like his pack. He's doing this stuff. They're doing good around the world. Great. Awesome. Like what's everybody up to? And I just think it would have been a way better way to introduce the characters again, because maybe he calls up Styles, maybe he calls up Derek, and they're like, oh, dude, since we've all stayed together for 15 years, let's use the mystique of like what has happened in that amount of time to like make people like enticed and like, oh man, how are they all still together? What are they all talking about? I'm excited to see what they're about to do, like all this stuff. And they just didn't do that. It was like I said, it felt very fan fiction of like, I just really need this one character to come back, please, because I'm in love. And it's like, yeah, but he ended in love. And so I'm just like, that was not for me, like, the void that needed to be filled. If there was, it was, hey, we caught wind that, like, Scott McCall finally is getting some power around here. And that scares us because what if he, like, wants to start throwing claws with the other werewolf clans? Have it tie into the mob. Have it tie into overseas, you know,
the Mafia
crazy.
versus Teen Wolf.
Yeah, Taken, Teen Wolf. Like, oh, dude, you just could have done everything.
Yeah, this just felt like Avengers, but bad. Like, they're, like, getting the team together, but then the team splits up immediately, and some people are doing things over here, and it's just, and some people are following the other people who are doing other things over here, and then people, like, get stabbed by samurai, but then they don't die. And then they get into I just don't really remember what really happened or like where everything was happening, and then they go into the magical world and then they win and that's it.
Well, they win, but then there's the second phase boss fight where he's actually also a werewolf and you're like, oh shit, it was stupid.
Oh, I forgot about that. I forgot half this movie, dude. We saw it like 4 days ago.
I know. I wish I could forget it just like you did. But I can't. It stays with me as I sleep.
Are you turning into a werewolf now because of you just think of Teen Wolf and you're just like, ah?
No, it's fine. Like, here's the other thing that people need to understand to have like a healthy fandom. You can also ignore that this even happened. And you can just be like, man, I really liked those 4 seasons. And then I didn't like the last 2 and I didn't like the movie. Great. You don't have to like, you know, take it out on other people.
Yeah, you can be
so
like,
I'm fine.
I liked Teen Wolf, but movie wasn't for me.
If you go upstairs right now, you're still going to find the collector's edition of every season of Teen Wolf.
Oh, yeah.
I have the physical copies. I woo, my guy.
I see that every time I come in.
That's right.
And you show it to me every time I come in.
And I've even got a poster I can give you. I'll sign it.
Yeah.
So you can have it forever.
You will sign the poster.
Duh. Who else would you have sign it? Dylan O'Brien? Maybe.
What a loser.
No. But now I respect the hell out of Dylan O'Brien because I'm like, I wonder if he did just get a whiff of it and he's like, this isn't Teen Wolf.
Well,
this is just a cash grab.
For a man who was a human in the show, he had the best nose and all that pack.
That's right.
Yeah, it's just, it didn't work for me, man.
I'm sorry.
It was fun to watch with you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's still some stuff where you're like, fist bumping, you're like, yeah, Teen Wolf, baby. Because I told him, like, here's what's going to happen. There's going to be a mysterious scene that happens at the beginning with some supernatural being, and it's going to set the tone for the whole thing, but we're going to have no idea what it is. Well, guess what happened in the first 5 minutes of this movie? Exactly that. And then I was like, then they're going to flash forward to either the main character or 2 characters that like have to have some sort of sexual relationship because it's Teen Wolf. So there has to be a little bit of like, haha, rebellion,
Mhm.
premarital sex, like classic, like woo. Both happened.
Yep.
But it was Paramount Plus style, so it
You
was
saw a
fine.
butt.
You saw a butt. What else had to happen? Oh, then they were basically gonna finish the movie with like the power of friendship will save
Yeah.
us, and that kind of is Teen Wolf.
Sure.
And so like those things, I'm fine with. Like I get it. That's Teen Wolf.
But just didn't feel like
But yeah,
the
continuity
build
and
or
stuff.
like I mean, yeah, you kind of build towards that to the whole season.
Yeah.
Here it was just like, oh, here's 5 minutes and friendship, or
Yeah.
like the science teacher comes back, and I'm sure that would have been a super cool thing to be like,
Sure.
oh, it's season 6, like, oh, he's back, like what the heck, and oh, Allison's coming back too. It's like there's just so many things that just felt like it was everything and nothing at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, no, this movie is like, I would have been happy if this movie would have been like a 5.5 or 6 out of 10.
Mm.
And unfortunately, this movie is like a 4 out of 10
Yeah.
for me. And the other unforgivable thing that like I keep telling Michael about is there's just like this level of like writing that I know it doesn't need to be excellent. It doesn't need to be like critically acclaimed or anything. But just for like continuity's sake, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. One of the characters at the very end, Derek, has to make a sacrifice to like kill the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they figure out that the only way for the bad guy to die is for one of them to still hold on to him while one of the characters burns him up. Because one of his ability, Hellhound, is like he can burn evil, purge it from the world. Kind of like Ghost Rider. Think like Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
If you're like a Marvel fan. It's like vengeance, flames, whatever. Okay. So we've established that this guy will get loose if we don't hold on to him because he's going to burn up and he's going to fight it. So we have to hang on to him. Well, Derek realizes, well, we both can't hang on to him. Scott and I both can't hang on to him because then we'll both die. So Scott needs to let go of him. But Scott's not going to do it because Scott's a good guy. So I'm going to let go of the bad guy. And I'm going to grab Scott and make him let go of the bad guy. And I'm going to throw him away off of the ledge so he can't grab the bad guy. And then I'm going to proceed to grab the bad guy because he had to be held the entire time.
But he wasn't
and
being
then
held. Yeah.
burn alive. But the bad guy was able to not be held for a second so that Derek could throw Scott off the ledge. Come on.
Impeccable.
Come on. Like, that for me, like, I'm sometimes embarrassed to be a Teen Wolf fan because I'm like, oh no, it's just me and like a bunch of like teenage girls. But that made me embarrassed to be a Teen Wolf fan because I was like, oh dude, out of all the ways to end a boss fight, don't do it with one of us has to let go. Let's both let go, and then I'll punch you, and then I'll hold on. It's like,
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. So that was just really...
And to even be like, I'm assuming Derek's a fan favorite because I like Derek and I've barely seen
Derek's
him.
dope.
And so like to have him go out
His sacrifice
like this.
was bad. It was bad, man.
Okay. Are people mad about that?
I think so. Yeah. Because, like, he had, like... They made a very deliberate effort that, like, he needs to reconcile and have a good relationship with his son. And, like, they have one moment where it's like, you're a werewolf now. Sick. I'm gonna go die. It's just like, dude.
But I mean, like movies do that all the time though. It's like, I've now created a bond with my son, but then they pass away tragically. This didn't feel like. It just didn't feel like he needed to die.
No,
it just
it
didn't
did
feel
not.
like it's like, oh,
Especially when they do
Derek-
that whole stunt
Derek-
right beforehand.
die. It just didn't feel like they were fighting. It's like, now we have to hold him, and then he'll die. It's like, wait, when did we have to hold him? Why did we have to hold him?
Yeah,
when
why?
did this happen?
Why?
Like,
Yeah.
when were the rules to like?
How about the Hellhound just takes care of him? Because
Yeah.
he clearly can do that.
It was just like there were
Apparently not.
rules that were not being said. There were like things that the characters knew because the writers knew. They're like, okay, this has to happen now, so we have to write it, and like we don't have any explanation. But here we go, we wrote it. Now just do it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it just didn't work out.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like, I can turn off the ability to be like, hey, just because something isn't like perfectly great doesn't mean it's not good.
I mean, can we say Violent Night wasn't perfectly great, but like
Right.
it was still like just fun, silly.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I would say even Werewolves Within was a way better movie than this.
Yeah.
Silly, campy
Yeah.
goodness.
You can just kind of get a sense that, like, if we're just having fun, it's okay if it's a little goofy from time to time. But, like, we weren't having fun. We were all kind of, like, asking questions. So it's like when the energy isn't matching with the cheesiness, it doesn't hit. But Teen Wolf is kind of like a beautiful combination of, like, can this take itself seriously and still be silly at the same time? And when it finds that rhythm to do that in all the seasons that I watched, like, it's awesome. It's a really cool thing to behold where you're like, yeah. Or it's like a good season of, like, it's like when you find heart in, like, a Power Rangers TV show. It's like, yeah, it's pretty much a formula of what they're going to do. But, man, sometimes there's just that one character
Just
arc
works.
that's like, hey, that's pretty cool. Like, yeah, I know they're going to get into a Megazord and just beat the crap out of some guy, but, like, it was still cool, you know?
Yeah.
Or Power Rangers, the movie, would make perfect. The 2017 movie's like, look, the source material is a little silly, but, like, what if we give you, like, real stuff? And, like, there's... Teen Wolf, to me, is, like, that energy.
Yeah.
And so that's why I've always liked it, because it reminds me of just, like, I don't know, just, like, creativity and that time of, like, being in high school where it's like anything can be possible. It's like, well, what if anything really was? Like, what if you could literally have superpowers? This is awesome.
Yeah.
What would that do, though, when you have to, like, protect your city with the maturity of being a high schooler? But you also have to be a detective. And it's just like, this is crazy. This is just, whoa. I'm over here, like, worrying about my history test. But these guys, like, or it's like Spider-Man's the same way. It's like, oh, dude, real life stuff in the midst of supernatural things with teen angst. It's just really good.
Do you think them not being teenagers ruined it at all, or?
No, because I think they still could have built off of what made the show great. Because, like, Derek was not really a teenager in the show. He was always, like, kind of the older brother, you know? And there was a lot of adults in the show. And so that really, the teen in Teen Wolf isn't essential. Because I think the heart of what the characters wanted to do and were trying to accomplish at all times was always, like, the same. And so I think that was just kind of what was hard for me, is in the 15 years, did they truly forget all the stuff that we're all remembering? It's like, yeah, come on. So it's just unfortunate, but I guess the pack is back.
Do you want to watch the Wolf Pack?
A part of me kind of wants to watch the new Paramount Plus show, Wolfpack, because I think it is unrelated, and so I wonder if in the TV format, if these guys can actually just do it again.
Probably.
If they can capture the magic.
Yeah.
And that's the other hard part. It's like, man, what if you guys are really good at just making TV? It's just a TV movie is, like, not it. That's just not the formula you guys need. It's not enough screen time for you guys to really breathe and figure it out. And because this felt like almost like a mini series jammed into, like, a 2.5 hour movie.
Yes.
And it's like, oh no, this could have, maybe it could have been like a 6-episode mini series where you actually tried to, like, piece together some stuff. Because at one point it was like Scott's being like, he's 35 years old and he's, like, playing lacrosse with high schoolers. I'm like, that wasn't what we needed. Like, we didn't need a grown man playing lacrosse again. Did lacrosse need to be probably mentioned? Sure, it was a big part of the TV show. But it was just, like, stuff where I'm like, oh, this is not hitting the way you think it was going to hit.
Yeah, they're like, oh,
having a
loves
grown-ass
lacrosse.
man playing high school sports is not like, yeah, like, that's what we needed. So, again, I think it was just very, like, trying to play off nostalgia.
Yeah, for sure.
And hoping that nostalgia could get it far enough. And then they tried to figure out how to write a story, like, right at the end.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work.
Yeah, I just think there's so many miscues, so many missteps in them trying to do so much, but ultimately not doing anything, because everyone had to have a character, everyone had to have a moment, but then if everyone has, like, 4 minutes of screen time, there's your movie. That's why it's 2 hours and 20 minutes, not because the story needed it to be 2 hours and 20 minutes, because everyone had to say something. And then this character has to interact with this character, and they have to say why they did this and where they became their powers and something. And it's just like, if it were, like, even a 4-episode, like, 45-minute kind of thing where it's like, just here's here's the first episode getting together.
Yep.
Cool, got it. Here's the next episode, them just interacting, and here's like a cool chill down episode, and then you have your big fight. It just didn't feel like, I don't know, because we're fighting against Allison, then we're fighting against the guy in the hood, and then we're fighting against the kitsune or the Nigitsune or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just like, great.
Yeah.
I
Here's a few things that, let's end on some pros.
yeah.
One, if they continue this, I am glad that Allison's back, because I do think Allison's a super cool character, and it would be cool to see like what that future could hold for the two characters. Dope. As long as she didn't come back as a 17-year-old and actually came back as like a 33-year-old. That's what I'm hoping.
Is that a possibility?
I don't know. Like if she's stuck in the afterlife, she definitely looks like
An older.
Yeah, I mean she's aged, so it's the same actress, so it's fine. I just don't know, like, canonically, if like she technically just came back the day she died. Because if she did, then
probably.
She's
I
like
mean,
in
that
a
makes
weird
the most
relationship with like a 30-year-old man.
That
But
makes
anyway,
the most
fine.
sense. But let's just say she grew up.
Yeah, she grew up. Two, while Styles not being in this sucked, I thought Lydia at least sold the reason why she broke up with him really well, and would love to see how that played out, because Styles, there's a moment where his dad says like he's putting out fires of his own, which was kind of just a way to say like he's not going to be here. But to see where Styles would be right now if Lydia broke up with him actually would be fascinating, because that's the love of his life, and if she's hiding something from him, you know what kind of gives me vibes of is one of your favorite movies of all time, Arrival.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Because somebody's
of, like,
saying something about what could happen in the future
and making a decision.
For both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that could have some beautiful like storytelling things. So like I think the ground is fertile for someone who actually cares.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to take this, I think there could be another like season or a movie again to kind of play off this if they could truly get everyone back. But it is unfortunate.
Do you want to see all 20 of these characters again?
No, I think those are the 4 that I care about the most. They didn't do anything for Jackson that made it even worthwhile for him to come back. He was the guy with Lydia, who can be like part lizard, part werewolf. Which canonically doesn't make any sense because they figured out how to make him a werewolf again, and now he just still kind of is a werewolf lizard thing. So anyway, don't worry about it. I don't know if the adults need to come back. I think it would be fine if we just continued on with like the big 4 again, like with Allison, Scott, Styles, and Lydia. Now that Derek's gone, unfortunately.
Rip.
And maybe Peter coming back every now and then because he eats up every scene.
Oh, no crumbs.
It's hilarious. Like he just always shows up and is like, "Oh, you're probably wondering why I'm here smoking a cigar in your room." And I'm like, "Yes, that's so bad, but so brilliantly."
He knew exactly what movie he was in.
He knew he was coming back to basically just be like, "Yeah, that like when Peter's on screen, I'm like, this is Teen Wolf, baby." Like, and I love it. But so I think there's some like good ideas here. It just was half baked.
Yeah.
And by half baked, I mean it was the oven got preheated.
It was technically hot.
The oven was hot and the pan was full of batter.
Yeah.
And that's where
that's
it
as
stopped.
far as we got.
So
yeah. So you're saying a 4?
Yeah. Be gentle to me.
I don't know, man. I think, honestly, initially, when we were done with it, I'm like, 6, fine. It was fun.
No way.
And then I thought about it.
There's some movies that you've put at 6 that are,
It's
better
got to
than
be
this.
like a 3 or a 4, man.
No, it's fine.
I'm saying 3.5.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
No, you need to be fair.
I'm never going to watch this again. I've never
Well, it's not so never.
I have no desire to watch this again.
No, I get it. Yeah.
I am not
And
tied
not even
to...
in like the trashy way of like, let's play a drinking game where we watch Teen Wolf the movie. There's no reason to.
Yeah, because it's not even cheesy or trashy enough to be like good. Or like I feel like most of Teen Wolf is like trashy enough to be like, okay, that's fun though.
Yeah.
This is just like bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just bad.
Yes. That's what it is.
Sorry, man.
No, you don't need to apologize. Like, hey, like I said, I had my trepidations because of some of the things I'd heard beforehand. But it was one of those things that I was slowly realizing while watching. I was like, oh no, like there just really wasn't a lot here. It's like everyone was in their careers far enough that they're like, I could come back because Teen Wolf's like where I got my start. But that's pretty much, I think, the only thing that was cool about it was they did technically get like 90% of the people back.
Yeah, that's great.
But it definitely didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it was sad to experience with you your love slowly dying for the movie and the hope slowly dying.
Yeah.
And I think it culminated when that rock showed up and everything was just not real surrounding, and you're just like, oh, it's fine.
Well, and it's like, you know, I would have been excited to have you say like, and then Nick cried, and it's like, I did, but not for the reasons. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't really cry.
No, Derek, I think they did a nice montage for Derek.
Sure, whatever. And that was one cool thing that I know they were trying to get us with, but like when Derek died, his eyes did turn red, which means he technically killed an alpha, so he's an alpha now. And that's cool because previously he was, and he got that taken away from him.
Oh.
And so it was cool to like, I'm an alpha, and it's like, yeah,
let go.
What it was just such a bad way for him to go out that it was like, even that didn't redeem it. But they tried to be like, his eyes changed to alpha colors. Cool.
That's the reaction of this movie. Cool.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
it just didn't make... There's just so many better context for, like... We've seen this play out where it's like it comes down to a guy having to make the sacrifice. But it wasn't built in a way that like made it make sense.
I didn't even know there needed to be a sacrifice.
Exactly. It was all, yeah. Like when you have Avengers Endgame and you're like, oh, if somebody has to like use the stones, this is going to be really bad because like the Hulk got torn apart.
Mm-hmm.
So when like Tony Stark is like,
sitting there,
I'm ready to use the stones, we're like, oh no, I'm about to be big sad because this guy is not able to do this. We know everything that has built to this moment. We've seen what a human holding one Infinity Stone does. Mm-hmm. You know, like we have all these things. Derek's like, I'm holding the bad guy that I have to hold, but let me let go of him for a second, and then I'll hold him again. And it's just like, no. So anyway,
yeah,
that was sad.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I would say Not United's favorite word to describe Nick, it's crestfallen. Yeah.
I am crestfallen, and for my boy Andrew out there, he would recognize this word and know what I'm meaning exactly, but I am woebegone.
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 Your woe is gone.
But what I will say is that nothing will ever tarnish or blow out the flame
of this pack
and the love I have for Teen Wolf.
Oh. Okay.
So I will continue to fight on. Fight the good fight.
Well, you know what? There's always an alpha, and I'm glad you're the alpha of this pack.
I'm just glad that we have that in recording. That's really what I needed to hear. I don't think anyone's ever said that to me, and I don't think I could ever ask anyone to say that to me.
Yo, I just want you to say it.
It's pretty cool that I have somebody who's like, you know what, and you're the alpha we need.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, the alpha nice. We deserve. The alpha we need.
Oh!
Not us united, baby! You've heard of two men in a room talking about wolves before, but you haven't heard us. Not us united.
Oh! We did it. Alright, see you, everybody.
Bye. You've just listened to Not Us United. You can find us under Not Us United on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Please leave us a review and consider subscribing to our podcast. You can reach out for future podcast topic suggestions at notusunitedpod@gmail.com.